Welcome to Planning by Design. In this video, we'll cover everything you need to know to avoid making some of the most common permitted development mistakes, including the basics of permitted development rights, top 5 common permitted development mistakes, top 5 consequences of permitted development mistakes, how to ensure compliance with permitted development policies, how to find out if your project is permitted development or needs planning permission. The basics of permitted development rights. Houses in England, Ireland, Scotland and Wales can have permitted development rights, but not all houses have permitted development rights. Flats, maisonettes and commercial properties do not have permitted development rights, so they always need planning permission. Permitted development rights grant homeowners the freedom to make specific alterations, including extensions, conservatories, garage conversions, loft conversions, porches, walls, fences, gates and access, decking, pergolas, driveways, hard standings and dropped curbs, outbuildings, solar panels, change of use house in multiple occupancy or HMO for short. Each project type is subject to certain standards and criteria, including limitations on the size of the building work and renovation. It is also important to understand that these rights vary depending on the type of property and its location. To qualify, the size and scope of the proposed work must fall within the specified limits and conditions. If you live in a listed building, you will have to apply for listed building consent. If you live in a listed building, a conservation area, or an area of outstanding natural beauty, your permitted development rights may have been restricted or removed. If so, you may need to apply for planning permission, even if your project meets the criteria for permitted development. It's always wise to consult your local planning authority or a qualified town planner to ensure your project meets the criteria for permitted development and there are no hidden constraints. Top 5 common permitted development mistakes. Failing to meet all the criteria for permitted development can lead to retrospective planning issues or enforcement action by the planning authority, which can be very stressful and costly. Hidden planning constraints catch many people off guard. These can remove permitted development rights and mean that planning permission is required. Planning policies can change and councils have the power to remove permitted development rights at any time in the future. Without a lawful development certificate, there is a risk of enforcement action even if it was permitted development at the time the work was carried out. It's crucial to fully understand the limitations and requirements of permitted development. These are the 5 most common reasons that people end up in trouble over permitted development. Number 1. Taking planning advice from someone other than a qualified town planner. Seeking advice on planning from an unqualified source such as a builder, estate agent or even an architect can result in inaccurate information, leading to breach in planning law and risks retrospective planning issues or enforcement action. To avoid these common permitted development mistakes, consult a qualified town planner. Only they have the qualifications and expertise to offer accurate planning advice to ensure your project meets all necessary criteria. This is why at Planning by Design we have both chartered architects and chartered town planners in-house. Taking chances without proper advice can lead to potential legal issues, fines and even require you to restore the property to its original state or use. Don't risk it. Seek guidance from a qualified town planner. Number 2. The design does not meet all permitted development criteria. Careful design is essential to meet all criteria for permitted development. If even one of the criteria is missed, even by a tiny margin, planning permission is required. In addition to the length, width, height, minimum living space and materials, etc. It is also important to assess the impact on the surrounding area. Architects are qualified in design but not planning laws, so even if their designs look great, they may not comply with relevant policies. A town planner will be able to advise whether your design meets these criteria. If it does not, you have the option to either modify the design accordingly or apply for planning permission. Number 3. Permitted development rights were used up on previous developments. Permitted development rights are limited, and it's important to keep track of any previous developments to your property that may have used up some or all of your permitted development allowance. Any previous developments, even a long time ago before you owned the property, may have used up some or all of your permitted development allowance. A qualified town planner can check the planning history to determine whether any previous developments have used up all or part of your permitted development allowance. Number 4. Permitted development rights removed before commencing work. Before you start construction, it's important to check if your property's permitted development rights have been removed. Many people make the mistake of assuming they can proceed without planning permission, only to face enforcement after the works are complete. Even if your project meets the criteria for permitted development, if the rights have been used or taken away, you will need to obtain planning permission. To determine the status of your property's permitted development rights, it's advisable to consult with a qualified town planner. Number 5. Permitted development rights removed after commencing work. It's important to be aware that while you may have permitted development rights when you begin a project, the council has the power to remove these rights at any time in the future, which could lead to enforcement action. If your permitted development rights are removed after completing the work and you don't have a lawful development certificate, you run the risk of facing enforcement action. To avoid problems, it's important to apply for a lawful development certificate. This provides legal confirmation and will likely be required when selling or remortgaging your property. If you think your project was permitted development but there's no legal determination or paperwork to prove this, you should seek professional advice from a qualified town planner. You may be able to apply for a retrospective lawful development certificate if your project meets the criteria and there are no constraints which restrict or removed your permitted development rights. Top 5 consequences of permitted development mistakes. Making mistakes with permitted development can result in stressful and costly retrospective planning issues. Number 1. You may receive a planning enforcement notice. Failing to comply with the criteria for permitted development would be a breach of planning law and could result in a planning enforcement notice being issued. An enforcement notice typically gives you just 28 days to submit a retrospective planning application or appeal. Bearing in mind you will need to prepare the required architect drawings and supporting evidence before an application or appeal can be submitted. Time is of the essence in these circumstances. Under the neighbour consultation scheme, if you apply for retrospective planning permission, your neighbours will have the opportunity to object to your application. Many enforcements are a direct result of neighbour complaints, so objections are common and can make securing retrospective planning approval more difficult. There is no guarantee that a retrospective planning application or appeal will be successful. The only alternative is to comply with the enforcement order, which includes restoring the property to its original state or use. If you have built anything more than a cheap fence or rely on a new use such as a short-term let for a source of income, the cost implications can be devastating. Consulting with a qualified town planner can help ensure your project meets all necessary requirements and minimise the risk of receiving an enforcement notice. Number 2. You may receive an unlimited fine. Ignoring planning regulations or non-compliance with permitted development rules may lead to severe penalties, including the possibility of receiving an unlimited fine. With a quick Google search of planning enforcement news, you will find many examples of people who have been fined thousands of pounds for what may seem like a minor planning breach, such as a door or driveway. So although your development may be low cost to build or implement, the financial consequences of making a mistake can be significantly more expensive in the long run. It is essential to be aware of the potential fines associated with a breach of permitted development rules and seek professional advice from a qualified town planner to limit your risk. By doing so, you can protect yourself from the consequences that may result from these common mistakes. Number 3. You may be forced to restore the property to its original state or use. Non-compliance with permitted development policies may require undoing any alterations made to the property if you are unable to secure retrospective planning permission. For example, if you built an extension, you could be forced to demolish it and restore the property to how it was. The same applies to loft conversions, garage conversions, fences, driveways, outbuildings, and any development that is found to be in breach of planning. If you have changed the use of a property and receive enforcement, you will be forced to stop using it as the new use until retrospective planning permission is approved, if it is approved. For a business, this can lead to many months of lost income in addition to the cost of a retrospective planning application. If your development is very low cost, for example, a cheap fence, you might feel comfortable with the risk of tearing it down. But for larger developments, most people are not comfortable with the risk. Number 4. You may not be able to sell or remortgage. When the time comes to remortgage or sell your property, you may be required to provide evidence that your development is compliant and lawful. Even if your project is permitted development without the correct legal paperwork to prove this, you may not be able to sell or remortgage your property. For something that is considered permitted development, this would normally be a lawful development certificate or a certificate of lawful use. Often this comes to light once an offer to buy has been accepted and the solicitor asks for documentation or when the mortgage is due for renewal to show the development is lawful. The requirements, process and costs for applying for a lawful development certificate are more or less the same as applying for planning permission. The best case scenario is around 3 months from start to finish, which often leads to the sale or mortgage falling through. Number 5. Your development may not increase the value of your property. If you don't have a legal determination to prove that your development is lawful and compliant, it may not increase the value of your property. If you want to create new space to increase the value of your property, you need to ensure you have the legal paperwork, specifically a lawful development certificate, prior approval or planning permission, and building regulations as applicable for your development. How to ensure compliance with permitted development policies. Permitted development rules and regulations are complex. There is unfortunately no one-size-fits-all answer, and there are many variables to complicate matters. To ensure your project complies with the current permitted development rules and limit the risk of making these common mistakes, these are the key steps to ensure compliance. Step 1. Seek expert planning advice from a qualified town planner. When it comes to navigating the complexities of permitted development regulations, seeking expert planning advice from a qualified town planner is a good idea. Hiring a professional town planner can provide valuable guidance on complying with permitted development policies and ensure adherence to guidelines. With their expertise, they can help you avoid common mistakes and make informed decisions throughout your project to limit your risk. Step 2. Apply for a lawful development certificate or prior approval. Applying for a lawful development certificate or prior approval is the only way to get a legal determination that your project is permitted development and does not require planning permission. Formal consent from your planning authority will ensure your development is lawful, adds value to your property, and protects you from retrospective planning issues or enforcement action. It is important to bear in mind approval is not guaranteed even for permitted development. Just like a planning application, it will either be approved or refused. If it is refused, you would need to apply for planning permission. However, as the council can only assess the application against the general permitted development order, rather than all planning policies, if your project meets the criteria and there are no hidden constraints, it should be approved. Another big benefit of applying for a lawful development certificate versus planning permission is that, unlike a planning application, your neighbours do not get an opportunity to object. Step 3. Inform your insurer. Informing your insurer about any changes made to the property is crucial to maintain coverage. Failure to do so may void your insurance policy. Keeping your insurer informed about modifications, even if they are permitted development, ensures continued coverage and protects you financially. Step 4. Apply for building regulations approval. Even if your project is permitted development, you may still need building regulations approval. Building regulations ensure that these projects meet safety and quality standards, contributing to their success and longevity. Compliance with building regulations is necessary to avoid penalties and complications. Ignoring building regulations in permitted development projects can have severe consequences. It can lead to structural issues and safety hazards, compromising the integrity and quality of the project. How to find out if your project is permitted development or needs planning permission. It is strongly recommended that you seek expert advice from a qualified town planner before commencing any work to limit your risk and expense. If your local planning authority still offers a pre-application service, this could be an option. You would need to submit architect drawings showing your proposed development together with a detailed written proposal. A pre-application costs up to £600 and typically takes 4 to 8 weeks to get a response, which is still not a legal determination and doesn't guarantee your application will be successful. Alternatively, we can provide you with pre-planning advice, starting with a free no-obligation consultation to discuss your project. Contact us now for a free no-obligation consultation to discuss your project. Thanks for watching. We hope this video on the common permitted development mistakes has been enlightening for you. If you found this video helpful, don't forget to give it a thumbs up, subscribe to our channel for more insightful content, and hit that notification bell to stay updated on our upcoming videos. We value your thoughts and questions, so feel free to share them in the comments below. Your feedback drives us to create more content tailored to your needs. Thanks for watching, and until next time, happy developing.